Hey everyone, I'm Beth McAndrews from Dread Central, and we're here today starting a new video series where we here at Dread Central talk about new movies, video games, series, books, whatever is out that we're excited about. And I'm very excited to be chatting about Alex Garland's new film, Men, with our staff writer, Drew Tinnin. Hello, Drew.
Hi, it's great to be here.
It's great to be here with you. Introduce yourself. Who are you?
I'm Drew Tinnin. I'm only actually one Drew Tinnin. I'm not like 8 or 9 different versions of myself.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. And I've been with Dread Central for a long time and was with Fangoria. Love horror movies and love to talk about them. And was at the premiere of Men in New York City and wasn't expecting it to be as star-studded as it was, and there was free food and free drinks, and it was really fun. And I can't wait to talk about this movie with you.
I'm also very excited. So before we jump in, we'll just give everyone a little bit of a catch up about what Men is if you haven't heard of it. So Men is Alex Garland's third feature film starring the incredible Jessie Buckley, who we have seen in movies shows like Chernobyl, and then Rory Kinnear, who is another incredible actor. And it is all about Jessie Buckley's character Harper, who goes to a nice British countryside retreat to have a respite after the tragic passing of her husband. But that respite is very quickly disturbed by men. And
a lot of men. Yeah,
a lot of men. But played by Rory Kinnear. And so, okay, just get initial thoughts out of the way. Drew, what did you think of Men?
I think
I love that sound. That sound is like my favorite sound of talking about movies, because you're like, oh, it's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah, it's a great thing to talk about. I think after the end of this movie, I feel like we thought we were going to be talking about it more and immediately have some ideas about it and have this like long conversation. But I really do think this is a movie you need to sit with for a while to really discuss. And I don't think that Alex Garland can really make a bad movie. But I think this is probably, out of the three, probably my least favorite movie from him. But I think it happens where you have somebody that's thinking about all these ideas all the time and really diving deep into a lot of themes. And sometimes those things don't end up on the screen necessarily. So once you get to talk about it more with friends or hear a Q&A or hear some interviews with the cast and crew, you can kind of appreciate the film, I think, a little bit more. But on a first viewing, I think there's a lot to unpack with it. And I wasn't crazy about it, but the more I think about it, the more I like it.
So what was it like seeing it in New York at the premiere with like a theater? Was it a full theater of people?
Totally packed. Yeah. I mean, it was great. I think we weren't expecting it to be as big of a premiere as it was, and it was great to see support from people that were in Alex Garland and Jessie Buckley's circle, because Oscar Isaac was there and Maggie Gyllenhaal, who had just directed her in The Last Daughter. So it was really nice to see that kind of support there, and so it was a really fun night with everyone. But there was a little bit, I think, at the end of the movie, it's a crazy movie, and I think there was a little bit of this kind of feel a little bit, where people are like, wow, I cannot believe what I just saw, especially because we'll get to the finale, but it's totally an insane ending. So it's hard for a whole theater to see that and know how to process it.
Yeah, because so I saw it also at obviously the press screening, and it was not full, but it was still a lot of reactions. So I didn't think about this movie being a good like audience movie, but I think it actually was a weirdly communal experience, because there's so many weird things happening, and we'll get to spoiler territory towards the end. But even there's moments where one of the various men says something gross and everyone just goes, ew, or they laugh, and this is tying back to what I really like about this movie, is that I was actually really surprised how well Alex Garland captured the experience of being a woman in society and having people, specifically men, sometimes say really weird off-kilter shit to you, and you're just like, what? He captures that so well. And that to me is surprising, just because, as a man writing a movie about women experience, you're like, I'm not sure. But I shouldn't be necessarily too surprised, because Alex Garland writes really great female characters. I mean, in Next Machina, you have Alicia Vikander's character, and then in Annihilation, it's all women. And in this one, you have Jessie Buckley's character, Harper. And that was what I was incredibly impressed by. And I think it starts off like a home invasion movie almost. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's got a home invasion, paranoia, creepy vibe, and then it becomes like body horror creature something later. But the home invasion vibes really got to me, I think,
Me
in the
too.
beginning.
I absolutely agree with that. But yeah, I agree with you, like as far as like the way Jessie Buckley is reacting to everybody that she encounters, where I like that she's not really taken aback by the behavior. Like she's almost like used to it with the, you know, with every kind of person that she encounters. Like she's actually like really, you know, forceful in the movie. Like it's very subtle,
Mhm.
but she's never a victim in the entire movie. She's just kind of going through these, you know, these different kind of vignettes with like different characters and these different men, and going, oh well, that's strange, or I've dealt with that before. And that's why I like that Rory Kinnear is maybe playing all characters, you know, in it, because she's like, oh okay, well, I've seen this before. But it's also the like Alex Garland was saying, is she really, you know, thinking that it's you know, actually Rory Kinnear, or is she just thinking that it's you know, all men are like this, and it's two very different things.
Yeah, I'm curious like what you think about that, because I mean there's like I think 6,000 different interpretations of this movie, which I feel like again is a very Alex Garland thing, where you have Rory Kinnear, if people are not familiar with him, he has been in a lot of really good stuff. He played Frankenstein in the Penny Dreadful show, if
So
anyone's
good.
watched that, and he is the best in that. He also was in I believe the first ever episode of Black Mirror, and he plays the prime minister who's blackmailed to fornicate with a pig on a live stream,
I feel
which
like if any, because Rory Kinnear's done a lot of Shakespeare, he's been in theater. Yeah, and I think like I'm sure he's glad that he was in Black Mirror, but as far as like being stopped on the street, I'm sure he's pretty tired about like, hey, you're the guy.
I know he's
Go
like, I've
ahead.
done so many other things and I'm so much more talented
Yeah,
than that.
like I was
But
Iago in Othello, like, you know,
and they're
I was
like,
Hamlet, and they just remember you you know, fornicating with a pig. So that's
I know. Oh,
not cool.
but so how did you interpret this with him playing all of the male characters? Like, what was kind of your read on it? At least your current read on why that choice. Do you have a thought? Any theories?
Yeah, one thing I think is interesting with A24 seems to be kind of delving in that territory. There's like multiple films where there's like people that are playing different characters, like not to spoil X, but that's one that's, you know, you have Mia Goth playing two characters. So I thought that was an interesting connection, but I actually didn't like it. I thought it was a little distracting, but then I think when you actually talk about the ending of the movie, it makes sense to me. I think once you see the intensity of the ending, I think it would have, and we can talk about it, but
Yeah.
I don't think that having multiple actors in that last scene would have worked, and I don't think it would have been effective, because he's kind of, Alex Garland is kind of doing a reverse version of a monster movie in this, I
Yeah.
think. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So the ending of it is kind of the entire movie, and that's why it made sense to me that he was playing so many different roles.
That makes sense. And I will say, I thought it was again, we'll go into spoilers. I thought it was really effective, except for one moment where they have Rory Kinnear playing a child, and they did some very strange digital de-aging slash manipulation of Rory Kinnear to look like a child, and it is so bad. I was so distracted by it in the theater when I saw it. We all laughed. We were like, this is very uncomfortable. And I was like, me trying to be all artsy, like, is it a stylistic choice? No, I think it was just not very well executed CG in terms of trying to make him look like a child.
Yeah, maybe they didn't need that character, honestly. Like, I mean, I get, like, it's like symbolically, I understand why there's a kid actor, and you know, and you know, Harper having to deal and having this kind of like hide and seek scene with this child. So like thematically it makes sense, but yeah, visually, like if it doesn't work, and you're taken out of it immediately, then you're kind of failing there, right?
Yeah, and like again, I get it because I think there's this whole thing about the cycle of masculinity and toxic masculinity, and having a child makes sense, but I just feel like maybe they could have either gone full creepy and just had Rory Kinnear as an adult looking like a child,
Yeah,
or just
yeah.
like done something else, because I don't know, that really did completely take me out of what was going on.
Just put like
It was just,
Rory Kinnear and some Angus Young, clothing from ACDC, and have him just roll with
give
it.
him one of those like little propeller hats.
Yeah,
It's like, look, he's a
just
kid, it's
like
fine. Exactly, has a lollipop and walks around with it. That'd be less creepy than what they did to his face.
well, then that's
If
well, if it's less creepy, then what? Then
that's
they
true,
succeeded. Yeah,
I guess that's
it was
true.
definitely creepy.
It was so creepy. And then I think you also chatted with Rory Kinnear, which will
Yeah.
be up on the web on Dread Central's website. But I'm curious what it was like talking to him about this and kind of his perspective on playing all of these characters, especially one particularly nasty character, the vicar, who made me want to vomit, which is I think a good thing. He made me want to have a physical reaction to his performance.
That was the most disturbing character for me too.
Yeah.
I think, and also because it was probably the most effective like one-on-one scene I think in the whole film, because they have we did when I spoke to Rory, we did talk about the pub scene that's in the trailer as well, where they're, and it's masterfully done, but he's really playing, I think, 5 characters that are all coming at Harper in different ways. So that was I think just the way they executed that whole scene was amazing.
Mhm.
But I talked to him mostly about prosthetics. I love,
Oh
and
yeah.
we talked about Penny Dreadful actually, and because that's when I probably first really became aware of Rory Kinnear. And I
Mhm.
remember watching Penny Dreadful, and I was like, this is Shakespearean. This is his his acting as the creature in that is so fantastic. And I loved him immediately, and such a tragic character. And he was saying that I think in that they got, when they were doing Penny Dreadful, that I think they got the makeup down to like 3 or 4 hours just to do the creature makeup. And for this, they had to do in some sequences 6 to 7 hours of makeup. So I don't think he was really prepared for what was going to happen. And I think, and again, going to the ending, I think Alex Garland was kind of thinking that it was going to be something like The Thing or inspired by The Thing, and they didn't like fully describe it and what it was going to be like when they first read the script and when they first saw it. So it was just called, I think it was just mutations, I think was what they said in the script. And so I don't think Rory Kinnear had any idea what he was going to be in for. So I think that a whole final sequence was really, really painful, but it's memorable as hell, so it's worth it.
I mean, yes. And just before we jump into spoiler territory with the ending, I just want to mention two more quick things. The first one is my favorite part of this whole movie um is when Harper, Jessie Buckley's character, is walking through the woods and she does the echo. You see the echo in the trailer of her going down the tunnel. That moment was so gorgeous, and the score of this entire film I think is really, it's got like religious kind of overtones, but also it reuses her voice and how she kind of creates her own little symphony with the tunnel. And something about that whole moment felt very magical and leans into these folk horror aspects that come up later in the movie, and it feels almost like a summoning spell, like an inadvertent summoning spell at
Oh,
one, like
that's a good way to put it.
I was thinking about, like, she's because when she's done, she sees someone getting up at the end of the tunnel, and it's like an accidental summoning almost. Like she's walking through the woods, she's having this moment of peace where like she can finally smile. Like you don't really see her smile a lot, and then in this moment when it starts to rain, she just relaxes, and it's this beautiful sequence, and then it immediately changes as soon as she kind of summons this creature thing, is what I'm calling it. And I just love how Alex Garland creates these like beautiful emotional moments in his movies in general and then breaks them immediately. And I think that's something he's really good at, is striking this emotional balance with his horror, because he makes some horrific stuff, but also makes these movies that are sad, deeply sad. Like I was sad. I was also deeply sad watching Men, because it's about, I mean, it's also about Jessie Buckley trying to get over the guilt that doesn't belong to her about an abusive husband. And I wasn't expecting that either. And that was, that was also a lot, like, emotionally.
Yeah, you're right. There are some quiet moments, and I thought about that scene too. I love that in the trailer you see that, and that's the first thing you hear, that echo, and then the movie, that scene is extended a little bit, and she starts kind of doing these harmonies with herself that I love, and Jessie Buckley's a singer too. Like she's been.
That's right.
Yeah, so I loved that, and I'm curious to know like how much they did like on the day. I'm sure it was all like in post, but I loved that moment where she was just kind of sitting there and kind of singing harmonies with herself, and had this like kind of nice healing moment, and she was really enjoying it. And then suddenly something else pops up, and it completely ruins it. It changes it completely, and you can tell by the silhouette who it may or may not be.
It's a man. It's a man.
It's definitely a man.
It's a man.
It's definitely a man.
It's a man. But I think I'm just so, and I am an Alex Garland fan. I think Alex Garland is one of the better contemporary, like kind of genre-ish. I don't even know if he's genre. I don't know what to consider him. He's just like makes crazy
genre
stuff.
I think
Genre, because I guess
he's okay with saying that.
Was sci-fi. Ex Machina was sci-fi. Annihilation was pure horror. I mean, come on. Devs was sci-fi. Did you watch Devs, his show, the FX
I didn't actually watch Devs. No, I haven't seen any, like one frame.
Oh, it's gorgeous. So I liked it a lot. The ending is a little bit like, oh, what? But it's very Alex. It's like San Francisco tech meets Alex Garland sensibilities. Like you mentioned, this is your least favorite Garland, but it's hard to say. I also feel similarly, but I feel bad saying least favorite because I like all of his movies. So I feel bad being like, it's my least favorite Garland, but I still really like it.
You don't need to rank it. You're right.
Yeah, it's hard. It's because it's like, people want you to kind of qualify where it falls in his filmography. And it's like, I still really like it. I think it's a little bit weaker in terms of, I think he tries to cram way too much into this movie. And I think that can kind of be to his detriment a little bit. I think it's a little bit too like kind of obtuse. Is that the right word? I'm not sure. I don't know if that's the right word, but it feels like a little bit harder to parse through some of the ideas he's trying to convey, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think I know at the Q&A he was saying that he was really inspired by Attack on Titan, which I thought was interesting.
That's so interesting. Did you watch Attack on Titan?
Yes, yeah. I've seen most of it. Yeah, and it was great. He said that he was, he got into it with his daughter, and actually that's why the ending became a little bit different, is because he was inspired by Attack on Titan. But yeah, I related to that because I watched it with my niece, and so I don't know. I think he's a fantastic filmmaker, but I think there's kind of two sets of rules that are happening in this movie, and when you're watching it, you're thinking, is this happening or is this not happening? So everything's happening, and then there's a nightmare logic thing that kind of happens, and then at the end you're kind of saying, oh, this really did happen. So it's really confusing, I think, in that way.
Okay, so we'll stop dancing around it. It's time to talk about the ending. Everybody, ending, spoilers. Don't watch any further if you don't want Men to be spoiled. Stop watching now. This is your final warning. Don't get mad.
This is the spoiler warning right here.
All right. So we are now talking about the ending of Men, which is just like a nonstop weird sequence of birth and flesh ripping. And
it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's incredible. Yeah. A lot of close-ups of vaginal openings, which, was not anticipating walking into this movie. I was like,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Some starfish imagery.
Just a little. But so yeah, at the end of this movie, Harper's undergoing this assault of men on her house, and then there's a figure who has been naked who has been following her around for this movie, and it is just full frontal nudity. Like and it's like funny. It's almost like it's like a found footage movie. You don't see him at first, then you see him in the background, and you're like, oh my god, there's naked Rory Kinnear. It's just like everything out for the world. But so it's, and I'm curious if he said anything in the Q&A, but it's a play on the Green Man myth of folk horror. So there's like the Green Man who is kind of like the everything, almost like a pagan god figure. And that's kind of what this naked man is what I interpreted it as. And as the movie progresses, he's growing thorns. Like he's getting more progressively like green, like the Green Man. And then he blows dandelion fluff at Jessie Buckley. And then all of a sudden everything falls apart. And he gives birth to the little boy, and then the little boy gives birth to the vicar, and then the vicar gives birth to Jeff, who is right. And then Jeff gives birth to her ex-husband, or her deceased husband.
Jeffrey was kind of the main character that Rory Kinnear plays, and he's very affable. So it was painful to see him get birth like that. But yeah, you're right. With the Green Man, I guess they're kind of playing with that like cyclical aspect of nature, and maybe tying that into relationships too, and how that kind of works with relationships, where you have the honeymoon period and you have, and you're in love, and then suddenly everything turns dark. But that's why what I was saying earlier, that's why I like that Rory Kinnear is playing every character, because if you were watching this whole movie and it was 8 different characters, right? Like it was 8 different actors, and then all those different actors came out in that birthing scene, be really distracting. You've got, and probably more difficult to do, but you literally have like 7 or 8 different actors coming out, and then finally her husband. But what I loved about it after thinking about it is that it is this monster movie, but once the monster comes out, like once the final monster comes out, which is actually her husband, I think his name was James, played by Papa Asidu, he just sits there and just really just wants love. So it's this whole idea of the monster finally coming out at the end of a horror movie, but the monster is pathetic. Like the monster is really not interesting. And he just she's like, no, I don't love you anymore. That's it. And it was just done.
Well, and then the monster's hurt because she is beating the absolute shit out of every man who comes through the door, window, wherever. Like she slices my favorite is, and it's disgusting, is when she stabs a guy's hand as he's reaching through the mail slot, and he pulls his hand through the mail slot and just splits his entire hand in half.
It's incredible.
So for the rest of the movie, which is, and it's a pretty good chunk of it, he's got like a split hand and arm, and he's just using it like this creature is using his hand like that. And it's this incredible creature practical effect thing that's like, holy shit. And she breaks its leg, she shoots it. Like this is a creature that keeps going, but it's like pathetic. It can barely move. So when, her husband is finally birthed out of Jeffrey's mouth, which is the feet popping out of Jeffrey's mouth and the sounds and like the agony. Oh my God. It was just, whew.
I loved it.
He's born with the injuries. Like it's not like he's reborn and he's okay, which I loved. I was like, oh, okay, so we're not having this whole thing. This is even more disgusting. It's not like he's reborn and he's strong again. Like he's just a gross, mangled creature still, which again, I did love. And again, it is this cycle of rebirth, and it's pretty, at points it feels obvious when it's like, okay, so he is giving birth to the little boy who gives birth to the vicar, and then it's like a cycle of men who are perpetuating a cycle of toxic masculinity and how women are treated, which is wild to portray it that way in terms of especially birth, with having a man have very explicitly a man giving birth, like zooming in on a vaginal opening and a baby head coming out of the body.
Yeah, I mean that's a visual I can't really. Well, what's funny is that I thought of 2 movies. I thought of Extro, and then I thought of Gozu too, which is Takashi Miike's film too, where you have like a really crazy birthing scene in that goes on for like 10 minutes. So I don't know if I doubt Alex Garland ever watched those films. I don't know if he's like a big fan of Extra, but this takes that to a totally new level. And I mean, I think if even if you're not on board with the entire movie, that effect sequence is and the ideas that could come out of that, I think are really worth it. And that's like the rest, most of the movie doesn't make, I don't think it works as far as like how does this make sense. But that end scene, if you just look at it, I really like the theme that he's talking about, and then and doing that in like a amazing special effects sequence is really powerful.
Yeah, and I think it is nightmare logic, because I was at one point like, oh shit, this is all in her head, but then I don't think it is. I think I am of the opinion in this movie it all happens, like it all happens for real, which is confusing though, because then you're like, wait, was it always, like my thing was like, is it always like this weird cursed place with this creepy man like coming around and like taunting and harassing women who come through? Is it not? And I think maybe that's meant to be more obtuse, but to me that was something that I couldn't really kind of like in my head, I couldn't really come to terms with all like the weird logic issues. I was like, I don't need everything to be logical, but some of this I'm not quite clear on what was happening at all. And I'm not sure if you were in a similar spot watching this movie and just being like,
I definitely was, but I was okay just being confused.
That's true. By the end, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like that was really cool. I don't really need to understand what's going on. Like true folk horror to me and like pagan stuff doesn't make a lot of sense. Like is like fully unknowable, and like that's like the cosmic horror of it all. If you think about it, like, and now that I'm thinking about this more, though, I feel like Men has more cosmic horror aspects than I initially thought. Like, and I think folk horror and cosmic horror go together really well in terms of like this kind of unknowable thing. And again, talking about The Thing, which I believe is also like cosmic horror, the unknowable. I think that's a really cool way to also think about it in terms of just like reality doesn't make sense here. Like you've entered a zone where reality is like not a concept that like our current concept of reality does not exist here. And I feel like in Annihilation, that was also kind of similar. Like concepts of what you think for nature are not applicable here. So that's kind of, I think, how I've been starting to process Men is in terms of existing in a time and a place that does not follow the rules of what we think time should be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to like categorize stuff too much. I know it's I know it's easy for us to, because I mean, anytime I watch something, and I, especially with folk horror, I love starting to play with those ideas, and cosmic horror too. But just thinking back about Annihilation with Alex Garland, like he read the book and then when he made the film, he just made the movie based on the memory of reading the book. That was his whole thing. So I like that. Like he didn't go back to read Annihilation again and then try to make a carbon copy version of the book into film.
Yeah.
It was his interpretation of it. So I think in that way, if you know that's kind of his, if you dig Alex Garland, that's kind of his MO, right? Like he's kind of he's just in his own head and doing his own interpretations. Then I think you're gonna like Men more than just trying to categorize it. And not to say that it's without faults, but and it's a collaborative effort. It's not just Alex Garland. There's like a lot of people that are involved in making this film, and the acting is incredible. Like Jesse Buckley and Rory Kinnear, everybody in it is fantastic. But if you're looking at like a vision, you don't have to categorize it sometimes, and that's hard to do. It really is. It's hard to make sense of it. But I think, within the film, within Men, you're setting rules, right? I mean, you're setting a universe, whatever it is. And I think whatever those rules are get broken a little bit, I think, in the movie.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'm curious, did he say how Attack on Titan influenced him?
I think it was mainly in the morphing, the way that they were using bodies, and like with Attack on Titan, the way they're using all these figures and all these different changes. Like I think he was going to do something that was maybe going to be I don't know, more practical and more inspired by Rob Bottin and The Thing. And he started watching Attack on Titan. He said, "I'm being lazy here. I need to like, do something crazy." And he did. I mean, I think that's what this movie is really going to be remembered for, is for better or worse, is going to be the end.
It's going to be one of those movies on everyone's listicles, like top 10 disturbing. Like I'm like throwing my own ass under the bus about things we write on the site, but like top 10 disturbing endings, because it's crazy. It is a crazy way to end a movie, and I applaud him for that. Like it's going to be memorable, and also like props to him for having this coming out in theaters only. It's annoying because that's A24, but like I mean, like I just love that these kinds of things are getting money. You know what I mean? Like he's getting money from A24 to make this weird ass thing, and it's playing in theaters, and it has like a pretty decent marketing campaign. Like that just makes my horror heart happy that something this weird is getting as much promotion as it is, and that's cool.
I love that too, and I also love that. I was at the premiere. Then I ended up going back to Texas, and I was watching the Met Gala, the red carpet for everything happening, and Jessie Buckley walks up, and she's in a suit with a mustache, like wearing a little mustache on it. So I was like, oh, that's really good, subtle marketing for men for the movie. Is great. And she still had her like blonde hair, and I thought that was really awesome. And I
so cool.
I don't know if that was a part of the plan, but I love the idea of maybe like her stylist or something just saying, hey, let's just put a mustache on you.
That is incredible. All right, so let's wrap up our discussion on Men. Drew, if you had to give this a number of stars out of 5, how many stars would you give Men?
I'm gonna say 3.5 out of 5.
Okay, I would give it a 4. So not too bad. I don't know why this, like, I think just the way it represents, especially like women's emotional experiences with both abusive partners and also with just men being weird on the street. I was so impressed with how it captured this, and Jessie Buckley really, like you said, and I didn't even think about it like that, about how she is not a victim in this movie. Like she is not like, oh my God. She's like, no, these guys are not going to ruin anything. Like this is just par for the course. And I love how the movie captures this and kind of takes that anxiety about living as a woman in general and like ramps it up so high and makes it into this grotesquerie body horror thing. And I just think that's so impressive and neat. And it's going to piss so many people off, though. It's going to be, people are going to hate this movie.
Definitely polarizing.
To hate this movie, but that's okay. People are allowed to hate movies. Just be nice about it, is my thing. I feel like people are going to be really weird about this one on the internet, too.
And well, just remember, the internet is only a very small percentage of the population, so that helps.
It's very true. That is very true. All right. Well, Drew, thank you so much for chatting with me about Men. Well, I'm Beth McAndrews. You can find me on the internet because I just have no shame. I'm at MB McAndrews. You can find me everywhere talking about horror movies and Real Housewives and everything in between. So thank you everyone so much for watching, and check out Men and let us know what you think in the comments below.